What is up, all you gun bunnies? This is AKA OnStar, and I am welcoming you to the launch of Shooter Roots Tuesdays, where I go in depth and look at the history behind the biggest franchises for the games that we love to play today. And I'm kicking this off with the Battlefield franchise, starting with Battlefield 1942. Now, Battlefield 1942 started the franchise in the middle of the competition. It was a little bit before Call of Duty came out, and it was a little bit after Medal of Honor and Halo came out, and it really brought some interesting things to the table. It brought massive 64-player battles, which is something very few games have successfully pulled off. And it brought in vehicle combat, something that really wasn't done very much. The only other game that I can think of at the time, or two games actually, would be Halo, and then the game that actually shares the same engine as Battlefield, which kind of gave the coding roots of it, was called Codename Eagle, which was made by a Stockholm-based studio called Refraction Games, who got merged with DICE before they released Battlefield 1942. And so Battlefield, it's got a little bit coming in and said, oh, we've got this engine, okay, it looks pretty good, let's build another game off of it, because Codename Eagle really didn't get very good reviews. It was kind of mixed. Some of the stuff was fun, the rest of it just kind of fell flat. And it came out in 2002 using the same engine, and it had 2 expansion packs. And one of the problems I see with 1942 is that there really isn't a campaign. It's essentially bot support on the maps, and the maps are laid out in the order that World War II happened. So you have each map, you go from map A to map B to map C as you win the battle. And so it kind of tells a story, but it's not a dedicated campaign the way Halo or Medal of Honor or Call of Duty is. Now, this lack of a campaign really is the only drawback I've seen for single player for the entire Battlefield franchise up until the launch of Bad Company. But it's 6 years and a lot of games. Battlefield is probably the most prolific game franchise that I'm going to be covering, because it's got 1942, the 2 expansions for 1942. It's got Battlefield Vietnam, it has Battlefield 2, which uses the Refractor 2 engine. Then it has 3 expansions for Battlefield 2, and then a console spin-off called Battlefield 2 Modern Combat. And then you got Battlefield 2142 and its expansion. And all of those games, the campaign is just, okay, here's bot support, go play on the maps. So there's not a dedicated campaign, which is unfortunate, because the game was actually really fun. But then, in 2008, Battlefield Bad Company comes out. It takes a lot of the gameplay that is fun about Battlefield and gives it a solid campaign, which is really interesting. I haven't played through it. I'm going to as soon as I get it and can get a capture card to post it. And it finally has a good, solid single-player mode. Shortly after Bad Company came out, they released Battlefield Heroes, which is a free-to-play version. It's a little bit cartoony. It's like 1942, but for free-to-play online. It's one of those little microtransaction games. And then the same year, in 2009, 1943 came out, which is essentially a console reboot of 1942. But they took the 5 classes and they trimmed it down to 3, and it was really designed for just console play. And then in 2010, they released Bad Company 2, which continued the storyline from Bad Company, and then they revamped Battlefield Vietnam and released it as Bad Company 2 Vietnam. It did really well. It was an outstanding game, and there was a lot of people playing it. It used the Bad Company series brought out what was called the Frostbite engine, which allowed you to literally destroy everything. See somebody hiding in their building? Put a rocket through the wall, blow it up. I've been able to run up and put C4 packs on a wall that I know someone's hiding behind and trigger it and kill them. It's playing through the game, you're like, oh, I can hide here from this tank. No, you can't. It's like, oh, hey, look, there's the tank. Boom, there goes the wall. I'm dead. And that really, the creation of the Frostbite engine really set the Battlefield series apart from a lot of the other games that are just, okay, here's some guns, here's some maps, go run around and shoot everybody. Yeah, there might be some interesting game modes in the other games, but Battlefield is like, oh, you need to take out this objective. Let's see, how can I do it? Let's blow up a ball. Let's take a jet. Let's fly in a helicopter. Let's take a tank and run it over. There's all sorts of options, which is one of the refreshing ways, because it's not like, oh, I'm tired of running around with the guns. What should I do? Get in a jet. Go hunt down other people. Get in a helicopter. Fly people around. Do a tank. And it's the creativity of some of the people that I've seen posting Battlefield videos is insanely high, which is really fun. And then in 2011, Battlefield 3 came out, and it's a very strong contender right now. So that's the basic history of the Battlefield franchise. I want to talk a little bit about the gameplay that you're seeing right now. It's the first map on the Allied campaign that kind of just throw you into it and say, okay, it's conquest. Here's where you're learning it. You each have flags on your bases, and you have to hold at least half of the flags to make the opponent lose points. And whoever hits 0 points first loses. And it's a very simple game type, and it works really well with large groups. The kit that I'm using it changes. Sometimes I'm using the sniper kit, sometimes I'm using the assault kit, sometimes I'm using the anti-tank kit, but all the different kits and their weapons will be covered in another video along with all the different maps. So those will be coming on Tuesdays every week until I finish the Battlefield franchise. And so have fun, and remember, you're never lost with OnStar.